Hi, it's Burt here from SampleLiveReview.com, and I'm really happy today to be taking you through Felt Instruments Blisko Lite. This is an ensemble string instrument that specialises in that soft, intimate, textural kind of sound. It's really super authentic and goes all the way from dark and sinister to a fragile beauty. Now, Felt Instruments are quite a new developer, but they've been regularly dropping superb libraries and an incredible filter plugin as well for the past year or so. They focus on a raw and minimal approach to sampling, which belies the complex tonalities that result from this. They've got a mantra to do things differently, and it's certainly evident in both the choice of the rare instruments that they sample or the unusual articulations of more familiar instruments, such as what we've got here with Blisko Lite. They've even built their own bespoke plugin to further set themselves apart. Alongside some unusual keyboard and piano instruments, the main line they've released so far is the Blisko range of textural strings. Now, until recently, you had to buy the violin, the viola and the cello separately to get a full section, but it's now changed with the release of Blisko Lite, which amalgamates these previous products into a wonderfully blended ensemble string section. Blisko Lite consists of 8.5 GB of samples. It's a watermark download via Pulse with free updates forever. There's a bespoke player for VST, AU and AAX formats. You've got 3 shape articulations with round robins and 9 moment articulations, of which 3 of those can crossfade into each other. There are 2 mic options, close and room, and you can choose from 1 to 3 players. You've got some vintage hardware captured echo and reverb on board, and it's MPE compatible. Blisko Lite sells for £179 plus VAT. The bundle package including Blisko violin, viola and cello is available to £269 plus VAT, and upgrading from Lite to the bundle is £135. This is the page that comes up upon first launching Blisko Lite. The first thing you may notice is that it's not Contact. This is a bespoke interface created by Felt Instruments for the Blisko range, and actually all the plugins that they've got, or libraries that they've got, should I say. And I don't have a problem with it. I know some people really don't like going away from Contact, but for me, it's never been a bother. I kind of like something a bit different. It also enables the interface to be a little bit more bespoke, and maybe in the back end, the developer can make features that might not be allowed or permitted using the Contact engine. So, I don't know. I think it's good. It looks nice and clear. Its Contact really could do better. It's still got sort of a bit sketchy graphics as Contact. So this is really nice and clear, and that beautiful, simplistic design, and very classy that Felt Instruments do so well. Now, we're on the arc articulations here. I'll play a little bit of this, then I'll explain about the arc itself, and we'll move on to other articulations and have a look at the interface. But I'll just play for a minute or so just to get a general feel about what kind of sound this library can give you. As you can hear there, it's raw, it's intimate, it's textural, and it's really emotional. That is hats off to Marta and Tomek, the two people behind this library. Marta, who played all the stuff, and Tomek, who is the main man behind Felt Instruments itself. Now, the arc's really interesting because we don't have any control over the length of each individual arc apart from with velocity. So there's 3 different lengths. So if I play really quite lightly on the keys, we should get a shorter arc. I'll try playing medium. And a lot harder. And none of this is BPM synced or anything like that. They're just 3 different lengths of arcs that felt right at the time of recording. And by playing them with different velocities and changing them at will, you get this nice kind of wave, ebb and flow motion of one arc dying down, another one kind of coming up. So you can kind of get them to blend all in with each other, which I really think is a fantastic little feature. It makes it just really playable. This whole library is massively playable. There's not a lot on the interface to get distracted by, and the articulations really do play themselves because a lot of the interest is actually baked into the samples themselves. Now, the interface itself is beautifully designed. We've got the attack there, we've got release, we've got echo, which relates to this down here. I will demonstrate the echo and the reverb on a different patch, which is maybe a little bit better than this one for doing so. But again, you just dial it up there, right up to 127. Reverb, just turn this little pyramid. Now the players icon is quite interesting. We can decrease that by pulling down, and you'll see these players change as well. You can, of course, go in and do it however you see fit there as well. And you've got the panning underneath. It's worth pointing out as well at this point that there's no numerical values on any of these. They're all sort of relative to each other, which may or may not be an issue for some people, but in practice, don't find it a problem. Mic blend has a similar thing to the players, and that it just brings down the close and far with one move, which is simple, but I ain't seen it done that much on other libraries. Maybe that's something that is harder to do in Kontakt, and why they've done it this way. And yeah, you can just go up and do that with them as well. Output here, that's a full whack, and you've got this stereo widener there. At the moment, I think it's pretty much 109. It sounds like it kind of makes it a wider stereo image. So we've got the EQ down here, lows, highs, and air. Preamp, which brings in a bit of analog goodness. That for me, don't know, could it have been squeezed on to the main interface? I know Felt are really keen on keeping everything minimal, so that's possibly why it's on a different page. But you probably won't need to touch it that much anyway. Echo type, there's 3 different types. There's 3 reverb types. Again, I'll go into them later on. We've got effects, high pass for the effects, and we've got a divisi. And that's implemented really nicely in terms of auto divisi, really. So if I play 3 notes, normally you'll get this sound. So we're getting 3 players playing 3 notes. I have to divisi, and they'll divide them notes up between the players. Automatically makes it for a far more intimate sound, and I'm not sure how it distributes them exactly, but it seems to just work quite nicely. The Cascade here is an interesting thing. I haven't seen on too many other libraries where we can delay the another player coming in by all the way up to, we've got there by a bar, it looks like, or at least a note maybe, which is a good way again of varying the sound. Now we've heard the arcs. Let's move on now to the risers, or the rises, should I say. Risers sounds like I'm some sort of sound design library. Okay, here we go. work in a similar way to the arcs in that the velocity depends on how long the rise is, and there's only two for the rise: a slow, or all slow, a longer rise and a shorter rise. And there are two different round robins as well, so you can kind of blend them over by playing the same key, and you're not going to get a repeated kind of sound. Let's have a look at the ricochets. This is done by, I think it was bouncing the bow off the strings and letting it kind of bounce again and again and again, just naturally how it kind of falls. You can play it a multitude of ways. There's a lot of dynamic control in that one. I think there's maybe 3 dynamic layers, and it just makes this really unusual articulation. Now, these 3 across the top are what they call the shape articulations. So these are as close as you're going to get to a normal articulation with this library. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 below are the movement articulations, and why they're called movement I will come to in just a second. And then we've got a final one, which is a custom one. I love the way, everything about this is nice. I love these just the little designs and how easy it is just to kind of just go back by clicking the background, sort of a back button. Nice little features like that. Okay, so tasto, pause. Now what we'll do before we dive into how these movements work, which you can see from that, we'll have a look at the echo and the reverb using the Sultasto Sustains patch. And this is what it sounds like first with nothing on it. Very simple, very quiet, but beautifully played. If we take the release down, we'll be able to hear a little bit more of the echo once turn that up. Now with the echoes, we have a tape echo as the first one, then these other 2 bits are, or the 2 echoes, should I say, are 12-bit vintage digital. The reverb, the first 2 here are rooms, and then we're going to get a wash sound there. But I'll play them all individually. I'll whack it up pretty high, just so we can really hear it. And I'll just play an octave just to make it a bit easier. Really nice and gentle. So the first of the 12-bit digital. Okay, small little feedback on that, but nice sound. So a bit longer delay and a longer feedback there. None of these are tempo synced either, just because of the nature of the original hardware that they were sampled from. Now we'll turn this echo down, just want the reverb up, and just hear what we've got going on there. I think it's always nice actually to have something a bit different in the reverbs. And we've all got loads of reverb plugins, but these were both chosen specifically for these string sounds. So felt I've definitely put a lot of thought into this about how best to add some room and ambience to these sounds, and created not just bespoke presets, but they've actually gone ahead and sampled the hardware as well as. It's really nice. They're kind of all really up in intensity if you think of it that way, if you forget exactly what's what. This is the wash one. So the first two are rooms. This is more of a big ambient space. That's really lovely. That's really well crafted reverb. It doesn't really get in the way of the sound, but still makes it sound really quite huge. Right, so we'll take them back off. In fact, let's give it a bit. We'll have a bit of reverb and echo just for good measure. Put this release back. Can't remember where we were. Was it about 60? There's no mod wheel control for dynamic layers. The mod wheel on this library relates to the fading between surtasto sustains and, in this case, the pulse sustains. So again, I'll just play, let's take it down into the cello range a little bit more. And I'll just start with the surtasto sustains and then ride my mod wheel up. So as we go up there, we hear them pulses, a stronger sound that kind of ebbs and flows and pulses, really. Now, the great thing about this is we can have up to 3 different articulations fading on there. So if, sorry, let's go back. If we click this one here, we can then choose something else. We're going to be looking at these in more detail anyway, but let's just choose, say, Fragilette sustains, so some harmonics. And we'll start down at the bottom, we'll go from the surtasto up to the pulse and then finally to harmonics. Oh yes, real nice. And again, we can cascade these so we get even more of a different feel of different players going at different times. And let's change this around. Let's go to a point brushed. Let's start that with the pulse instead. And what we get is something that would be incredibly hard to do with a real string section. One, because that's not the way that they would normally play, but also it's probably going to be quite hard to sort of orchestrate that as well. It'd be possible, but this just enables things to happen that may be not doable or unlikely to be experimented with in the live world. Back on the presets, we'll have a look at the Collegnos. And you've got the sustains. I guess almost atonal, using the back of the bow. And again, with these, we can go up to 1 or 2 more. Now we've got some harmonic sustains going to trills. This, I think, is the favourite patch of Tomek from Felt. Now let's give a bit of reverb. Let's kind of go big with the reverbs. And it echoes. Whack this echo up. Oh yeah. And let's bring the players down. So it's a little bit more intimate. And a close mic up. I love that the descent from the trills into the sustains is really something. I play it a bit lower down, do the similar sort of thing. That's great, that. Pointless sustains. This is a take on, well, the felt take, I guess, on some pizzicato type of thing. Plucking of the strings and then brushing them maybe with a little bit of the bow. It sounds like a circular motion happening with the brush ones there, but the texture and the closeness of that plucked is really something. It's a good point maybe at this stage to go back to the plucked and we'll have a little listen to the mic blend. Now let's put the close right down there. The difference between this and the violin, viola and cello, of which it's comprised, is that you don't get quite as much control over the mics. They've amalgamated the two close mics and the two stereo pairs of the far into one. Now the close has a ribbon, giving some nice warmth and detail, and also an Elam 251 clone a bit further back, which gives an open airiness to it. And the blend of those is how I've got the close mic sound. That is really like you've got your ear right by the player. It's a very, very dry sound. I think the room must have been pretty well treated to get that kind of feel. I'll play some lower down, some really high up as well again. And I guess that could go all the way to like a horror type thing, or by putting a bit more reverb and stuff on into some sort of ambient atmosphere, atonal type of sound. It has tone, of course, but, you know, it's a little bit more on the textural side. Okay, that's the close mics. I play using the same articulation for the fars, just so we can get a decent comparison. Now, the fars are, it was a homemade small diaphragm condenser stereo pair, or homemade or handmade, should I say, in ORTF array. And there's also a mid-side array of stereo ribbon mic. Now the ribbons obviously give it a bit more of a warm sound, and we get a lot more of a narrow mix on those ones. The small diaphragm condensers are set wide. So again, it's a combination of two sets of mics that really give a balanced sound to the far. Now, it says far, but don't be thinking this is kind of, you know, Air Studios or something like that. This is still fairly dry sound, but just gives a bit more width and ambience in addition to the close. You can't really go wrong because the far fullback and the close fullback both sound great. I would probably inherently go a little bit more, well, for just a personal taste thing, for want of anything else, just a bit more of that open sound with a touch of the more detailed far. But yeah, it's going to change for every different piece that you write. And finally, we'll come to the last preset, which is Tremolo bursts. Regular tremolo there, but kind of comes and goes in a pulsing type of manner. Let's go to the pulse. So tasto sustained. I love this one, whisper quiet, lovely. So you can blend any articulation to any other one. And what you might hear there is that the tremolo bursts are really pretty loud and the soltato sustains are very whisper quiet, which means that it's hard to blend them perfectly. However, there is a way around that. If you've got a tremolo burst, we have a layer volume here, which enables us to take down that up to 6 dB. So we've got a quieter sound there. Likewise, if I go to soltato sustains and I turn that up a bit, they're a lot more balanced, which means that we can, and let's just go to Divisi just for fun for this one. which means that we can get a nicer blend, and there's more of a larger sweet spot. Before, I was just bringing it down a touch and it was suddenly kicking into the tremolo burst, but this gets around that. It's a little fiddly because it would be quite cool to have some sort of volume control like on here, so I could click that and it turn up and down the volume rather than have to do this and do this. But, you know, it works. We'll go flageolet sustains, and then we're going to go bow on wood, which is an interesting one. At the very top, it's incredibly non-musical. But when you blend it in with something else, that is something else in it. That's so nice. I'm going to take it down to the. And in fact, let's get away from the burst and let's have a look at. Oh, pump brush was nice, wasn't it? We're going to start with the bow on wood, and then we're going to kind of go down to here, and then end up there and see how this goes. That's really something. This is one of my favourite textural string libraries. I've got quite a few because I kind of love the sound that they give, and I love layering them with synths because it gives a kind of nice crusty realism to certain cues so they don't sound too synthetic. And this is one of the best in terms of the sound, but also in terms of its usability and playability, and the echo and reverb I really love. We have some other things down here which I haven't mentioned. We've been over Division, but the variant randomizes the sample start time, and MPE is also for people who have got them fancy controllers, which I would love one at some point. If anyone wants to send me for one for review, I'm more than happy to play with it. But this works excellently. I've seen a couple of demos of people using MPE with it. It works really well for this. You can slide your fingers up the controller, and that'll blend between these articulations instead of the mod wheel. So the variance, I'll just play a little bit of the variance just so we can get an idea of what that is. By randomizing the start time, it just gives you even more variability and evolution possibilities within some long-held notes. Now, there's not much else to say. We've been there. We've had a look. We had a look at this. I don't think we have. So this is the only other page apart from that EQ page that we saw before. Hats off to Tomek. Hats off to Marta for a brilliant product. And we've got some things like change the sample folder, choose the sample folder, should you move it somewhere else? You can choose your drive. Interface size is a really nice touch. I always like that. I've got it on the biggest one here. Panic button, fine tune, global tune, and pitch bend. And that is about it. You've got the custom patch here, of course, as well, which means you can just start with, all starts with sultasto sustains, and then add whatever one you'd like. Maybe it's that. third. Let's go the trills. Let's change that to Legno sustain. Let's change that one to Tremolo breasts. Can get a bit more manic just by getting more of the extreme articulations and going a lot faster on the mod wheel, so that definitely gives it an extra touch as well. Before we finish, I want to quickly go back to the arcs, and I'm going to just play some stuff with just one player, because I think I've been playing a lot of stuff with all the players and actual multiple notes as well, so just take you back to the bare essence of the instrument. Load up the arcs here. I'm going to reduce the players right down to 1, and we'll have a slightly more heady balance of the close mic there. And everything else is off, so this is kind of at its rawest. These are really quite beautiful strings. They're raw, they're honest, and they have a fragile emotion to them. Now, as we introduce these other players, it's also worth noting, I could have done that an easier way, doing that and being fancy. It's also worth showing off how wide they can sound, which is really pretty tasty. Let's get this far up for this one. I haven't got the hang of using this yet. I have to go back and start using that a bit more. There we go. A bit more far on that one. Okay. And I'll put a little touch of reverb on this just for the glory. And again, I'll just play some single note stuff, but concentrate on how wide the soundstage is when we add the extra 2 players at the extreme panning. And I'll even slightly widen this output as well. Just sublime. And the last 2 notes I played there show the extremes of this string ensemble, all the way from C2 up to A6. And I did find that the blend between the cello, the viola, and the violin in this library is incredibly seamless, and it's really hard to hear where one ends and the next one begins. I was actually first drawn to felt instruments by the classy visual aesthetics, which just really connected with me. And having tried their freebie Walnut, which is a half-speed piano, and I also bought their Rhizo filter plugin, I was really happy to discover that minimal and nuanced taste in graphic design was echoed beautifully in the aural world. Blisko Lite only serves to reinforce this impression. It simply oozes atmosphere and emotion. The recordings themselves stand out as some of the best textural string samples I've heard, and this is all presented in a brilliantly designed interface that includes some innovative features. The velocity-dependent lengths for the shape articulations, along with the mod wheel control crossfading between the moment samples, make it so incredibly playable. There's little to grumble about here, but changing the EQ and articulation volume could be a bit more intuitive, perhaps somehow move and control these functions to the main page. I also found the volume between some articulations can vary quite a bit, and the noise floor does creep up on the quietest samples, though by not employing noise reduction, the nature of the recordings is much better preserved, and personally, I prefer this trade-off. Unlike Contact, there's no ability to purge unused samples to preserve RAM, though it's not an especially RAM-hungry library, so it's not a big deal in practice. It's worth noting that if you're looking for a standard string library with legato and the typical shorts, this is not the droid you're looking for. Blisko Lite is purely textural and at times quite aleatoric. Likewise, if you're a tweaker and want to control aspects of a performance, this might not suit you, as so much of the variance is already baked into the samples themselves. This type of soft, evolving, experimental string sampling has been tackled by a small number of developers in recent years, and the trend for these types of sound in modern media scoring shows no signs of going away soon. And with all things Blisko felt at the forefront of this niche. The fragile beauty here is pure inspiration and highly recommended. Please like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and if you've got any interesting comments, we'd love to hear about some of your experiences with Blisko Lite. Be sure to also check out samplelibraryreview.com for the latest reviews.